Forum of Chiefs of Enterprises FCE will contribute in funding young entrepreneurs and help them develop their activities. A national conference on the assessment of the higher education sector is to be held tomorrow here in Algiers under the chairmanship of the Higher Education and Scientific Research Minister Tahar Hajjar. The UK, US, France, Germany, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Turkey voiced deep concern over Moscow's action in Syria as Russian jets carried out a third day of airstrike in the war-torn country. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this news edition brought to you live from Dzair News Studios. I'm Oussama Senouci. To start our main news edition in business-related news, the head of FCE Forum, Mr. Ali Haddad, paid Thursday a visit to the province of Tlemcen in western Algeria to kickstart the first ever university workshop. In a statement to media outlets, Mr. Haddad said that the Forum of Chiefs of Enterprises FCE will contribute in funding young entrepreneurs and help them develop their activities. He added that with the contribution of wealthy members of FCE Forum, he will grant $1 billion dinars to Jil FCE youth and promise to give more in the future. Let's have a listen to what he said.
This vault that we've proposed before for the young people of Jil FCE is considered as an internal function for the FCE Forum. So external matters do not concern us. So wealthy adherents at the organization will put under the disposal of these young people funds to help them develop their activities. So we will start with $1 billion dinars and we will contribute with more in the future.
For more details on the topic, let's listen to what our envoy to Tlemcen, Lamia Ashoush, said.
The third and last day of the works of the FCE Summer University here in the Western Province of Tlemcen. As we said yesterday, this is the first university of its kind to ever be organized by an employer organization in Algeria. What has been special about this FCE Summer University is the importance the FCE is given to young entrepreneurs, young CEOs and businessmen with the creation of what they called FCE Jil, which is a branch of the FCE consisting of young people, young leaders, young CEOs and businessmen. This young or Jil FCE will be mentoring and helping young businessmen to enter the business world and to be successful in life. Of course, this young or Jil FCE will be working in collaboration with the senior members of the FCE to, as I said, help young entrepreneurs. This morning, a panel of discussion was organized with the presence of a lot of students, businessmen, entrepreneurs who came from nearby provinces to have the chance to discuss ideas and experiences with senior members of the FCE. It was appreciated by most people present here, and what was remarkable this morning was the speech or the announcement given by FCE President, business magnate Ali Haddad, who announced the creation of a fund consisting of 1 billion Algerian dinars to help young entrepreneurs, to help fund young people with ideas who can't quite make it through in the business world. The 1 billion Algerian dinars was contributed by himself, the President Ali Haddad, who contributed with 200 million Algerian dinars, together with his executive vice presidents. We have with us today Mr. Walid Wild Babali, who is a young Algerian future entrepreneur. He's currently a student who attended this morning's conference, and we just want to know your impressions of the FCE Jil. How do you feel about this initiative? Who was created for young people like you to help them succeed?
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for welcoming me. Secondly, I'd like to thank also the President of the FCE and his Vice President and the General Secretary Ms. bin Abdurrahman also. I'm very impressed of the initiatives and the work that they delivered for the youth. It's really impressive for idea generators like me. I'm very impressed of the coaches and the advisors that they are planning to mentor the students like me in the future who hold ideas in order to implement their projects in the future. It's really impressive.
How about the fund of the 1 billion Algerian dinars? It's a staggering number, and I know it gives hope to a lot of young people like you. Do you think this is gonna help you implement your idea? You said you're an idea generator.
Okay, of course. I was really impressed when the president of the FCU, Mr. Ali Haddad, donated with 200 million dinar to this committee, this funding committee, and I'm planning to suggest my project and follow my idea. And follow, be mentored by different advisors, FCE advisors, in order to implement my projects coming up into reality as targeted.
In the education file, the Minister of National Education, Nouriya Ben Ghabrit, has declared in a statement to the press here in Algiers that the Education Ministry has a bounden duty to provide all the necessary means and tools to the students' comfort in a bid to crown their studies with success. Let's have a listen to what she said.
Our sector is obliged to provide a seat for every single student. We don't have Solomon's ring to do everything in a minute. If you have this magical tool, I hope that you can help us with some quick solutions. We have set lots of projects, and some of these have been achieved. We have opened some schools, but others are under construction, as this has a link with the availability of workforces. We all live in Algeria, and we know that the field of construction is quite complicated.
Still with the education track, a national conference on the assessment of the national higher education sector is scheduled to be held tomorrow, and the chairmanship of the relevant Mr. Mustatar Hajar. Major issues are expected to be discussed by those attending, including the LMD system and Magister contest, as well as other pending questions awaiting settlement. More details with Hints Minoraz.
University principals all around the national territory are on schedule tomorrow with the Minister of Higher Education during an evaluation meeting resolving around the degree of success of 2015 university comeback. The principals will display technical and regulatory issues they faced, notably overcrowding and other pending constraints in light of the major material and pedagogical means that have been dedicated for a successful academic year. The strict instructions the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research has directed to the sector's local officials regarding opening negotiations with the social partner, involving the latter in decisive decisions that concern the university's internal management. Meanwhile, Minister Hajar stressed the necessity to rationalize the management of the sector's budget, declaring that his ministry won't back off on the projects previously embarked on, while other unlaunched projects have been frozen due to the recent austerity policy the government is adopting. Concerning magisterium degree, authorities concerned settled the issue by permanently cancelling the competition starting this university comeback, opening door to classical systems graduate students to join masters.
In environment-friendly news, Algeria submitted its instrument of acceptance of the Doha Amendment to the Kyoto Protocol to the United Nations Framework Convention on the Climate Change late September 2015. More on this with Mohamed Barzwan.
The United Nations is encouraging governments to speed up their ratification of the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol, the International Emissions Reduction Treaty. Ratification is necessary to provide valuable momentum for global climate action for the years leading up to 2020. In August 2014, the Secretariat of the UN Framework on Climate Change wrote to governments asking for an update on their ongoing preparations for ratifying the so-called Doha Amendment. The amendment, which extended the Kyoto Protocol in advance of the new 2015 agreement, was agreed in the Qatari capital in 2012. To date, 45 parties have accepted the extension, including Algeria, and 144 are required to bring it into force. United Nations Executive Secretary Cristina Figueres has encouraged governments to complete the ratification process as early as possible. This will provide an important positive political signal of the ambition of world nations to step up crucial and decisive climate action.
In international news, Palestinian medical sources in the northern West Bank town of Nablus have reported that dozens of residents, including mother and her child, were injured on Friday at dawn in a number of attacks carried out by Israeli extremists targeting homes while trees were burned. The sources said the attackers hurled Molotov cocktails on Palestinian home while the family slept in Berin village, south of Nablus. The house was partially burnt while the mother and her child suffocated due to the extensive smoke inhalation and received the needed medical treatment. The UK, US, France, Germany, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Turkey voiced deep concern over Moscow's action in Syria as Russian jets carried out the third day of airstrikes in the war-torn country. They said in a statement they are especially concerned about attacks by the Russian Air Force on Hama, Homs and Idlib since yesterday, Thursday, which led to civilian casualties and did not target the extremist group ISIS. Karim Faz-Zakari and the details.
A new wave of Russian airstrikes in Syria has targeted the west and northwest of the country. Moscow began its aerial raids against insurgents in Syria, including the self-proclaimed Islamic State, or ISIL, on Wednesday, September 30th. This move was highly welcomed by Russia's allies, including Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, as well as Iran. Some 18 new strikes are said to have been carried out since Thursday evening, October 1st. According to Syrian military reports, the raids focused on ISIL strongholds. However, some of the areas hit include provinces such as Idlib and Hama, where the jihadists have little or no presence. Insurgents fighting in Idlib and Hama are largely allied with anti-Assad rebel groups. They also operate in the Russian-targeted Aleppo province, where ISIL has a base. In this context, Turkey and its partners in the US-led coalition against ISIL on Friday, October 2nd, called on Russia to stop its airstrikes on the Syrian opposition and focus on fighting Islamist militants. The coalition group further added in a statement they are especially concerned about the attacks by the Russian Air Force on Hama, Homs and Idlib since yesterday, Thursday, which led to civilian casualties and did not target Daesh IS. These suggestions by the West that the Russian air campaign is a pretext to target rebel opponents of Syrian President and Russian ally Bashar al-Assad were objected by Russian President Vladimir Putin, who arrived in Paris on Friday to discuss the air raids with his counterpart François Hollande. Moscow maintained that the attacks were aimed at the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant ISIL group and other terrorist organizations. The Syrian conflict, which began as protest against Assad's regime in 2011, has escalated into a multifaceted war that has drawn thousands of fighters from overseas. Over the past 4 years, more than 250,000 people have been killed and half of the population displaced.
In other topical world news, US Air Force transport plane crashed early Friday in eastern Afghanistan, killing more than a dozen people, according to an American military official. The crash occurred as the plane assigned to a scoping airlift squadron was taken off around midnight from the airfield in Jalalabad. Karim Faz-Zakari and the details.
A US C-130 military transport plane crashed at an airfield in eastern Afghanistan shortly after midnight local time on Friday, killing all 11 people on board. The cause of the accident is under investigation. US defense officials at Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan said the crew comprised of 6 of its service members and 5 civilian contractors who worked for NATO's Resolute Support Training mission. All of them were killed in the crash. The plane came down at Jalalabad Airport, east of the capital, Kabul. The Taliban movement seeking to overthrow the government has claimed its fighters shot down the aircraft. However, U.S. Air Force Major Tony Wickman dismissed that claim, stating he could say with high degree of confidence that an enemy attack did not contribute to the crash. The U.S. military added there were no reports of enemy fire at the time, and that the crash was an accident. The C-130 Hercules is a 4-engine cargo plane built by Lockheed Martin. The accident came amid fierce clashes between Afghan troops and Taliban militants who stormed through the strategic northern city of Kunduz on Monday. Afghan troops have since reportedly captured key parts of the city. There are about 1,000 coalition forces in eastern Afghanistan, including US and Polish forces, as well as about 40,000 Afghan troops according to NATO.
Everything is going digital these days, including education and cultural experiences for children and families. For a look at the latest digital experience making learning more fun, let's follow this report. With the wave of an army in front of a screen, people can interact with digital content. This is a new attraction called Pride in Korea at the Everland Resort. It allows visitors to be a part of history through a virtual technology. Children can even fight alongside General Si Young-sing in an epic 16th century battle.
It was so much fun to experience the Battle of Myeongnyang after only reading about it in books.
The digital facility, which includes a 4D theatre, is a joint project with ICT Ministry that aims to make learning more fun for children of the modern age. Over at the K-Life Hall in the Dangjeom district, a new show produced by Korea Telecom called the Science Show Human Museum teaches people about the wonders of the human body through art.
It was really cool to see all the famous artists and their works up close through holograms.
We've created a new show that incorporates holographic technology with Western art. It's become a huge hit among families during the summer vacation season.
High-definition holograms and a premium surround sound system helps present a captivating lesson for audiences. The 1-hour show will run daily, 5 times a day, through August 23rd. In international cultural news, the literature world monument, the ingenious gentleman Don Quixote de la Mancha, according to the institute that bears the name of its author, Cervantes, is the world's most translated book after the Bible. The Spanish treasure is continually visited by Don Quixote lovers. More with Karim Fazakari.
The exhibition Per el Mundo Quixotes at the Institute Cervantes in Madrid attracts hundreds of Quixotes fans. This mythical figure of wrongs and evil fighter who never gives up despite his failures is a literature world monument. Cervantes' novel is, according to the institute that bears his name, the world's most translated book after the Bible. The literary giant and father of the modern novel, Miguel de Cervantes, is the ingenious gentleman Don Quixote of La Mancha author. He died in 1616, a week after William Shakespeare. His work was published in 2 parts in 1605 and 1615. His influence on the Spanish language has been so great that the language is often referred to as the language of Cervantes. But his impact has also gone well beyond Spanish, particularly in the development of the novel as an art form. Don Quixote is such a universal symbol that somehow generates a specific approach to each language and imagination. The commonly used phrase, tilting at windmills, meaning to target imaginary enemies, also originated from the adventures of Don Quixote. Much of its popular talks is even found in the English countryside, according to Ernesto Perez. The first English translation, 1612, fits somehow the vision, the landscape of Don Quixote in the English countryside, or even more the language of Sancho Panza becomes the talks of the most popular areas in London. The work of Cervantes was translated to so many languages and was adapted to various cultures, with some passages added or deleted. These translations, particularly in major European languages before the 20th century, integrate their own worldview, and Don Quixote is constantly enriched. The French translation does something similar. It is considered that it lacks erotic passages, and there are some added which are not in the original text, and yet are then translated from French to Russian example. Cervantes spent his last years in Madrid district, now called the Barrio de las Letras, the Arts District, in homage to the writer as well as to his 70th century rivals Lope de Vega, Francis de Quevedo, and Luis de Congora. The area of that time was home to writers, actors, and playwrights, according to historians.
And finally, to wrap it up, let's delve into the rewarding realm of culture here in Algeria, with a focus on new theatrical play put together by a host of talented comedians in the central province of Media. A well-timed play meant to address several major issues related to the protection of the environment, the evolution of the Algerian society as a whole, as well as women's homelessness and marginalization. Hence, Minoras reports.
In light of the National Festival of Comedy Theatre, competition shows kick off, a distinctive competition in which laughter is used as a weapon to steal the show. The first of comedy pieces was from the city of ancient rocks. In a comedic mold, the play discussed women's malice and cunningness, notably when in danger. Merry Wives of Windsor, Shakespeare's masterpiece, was genuinely performed by the talented comedians. The play is known to be Shakespeare's, though we treated it otherwise. We added several things, and we didn't exactly stick to the script.
Well, today's play was a good start for Humor Theatre Festival. This play exposed the vexed issue of the struggle between virtue and vice, and in the end, virtue triumphed. This play is purely a comedy one.
From Bijaya, the forest's boat came traveling to expose the never-ending concurrence between men and women, sarcastically embodying the collision between Farouja, a woman fleeing society's constraints, and Saeed, the forest's custodian.
This theatrical duo was chosen to address several major issues, mainly the protection of the environment, the Algerian society as a whole, women's vagrancy and their marginalization. This tragic comedy is an artistic form through this duo alone in the forest, the play, which reinforces the relationship between men and women and what they share in daily life.
The actors, with their artistic touch, could turn everyday dramatic events into funny situations, making a show out of society's worries and concerns.
With this, our news edition comes to a close. Thank you so much for tuning our way. Have a good evening.